we sit here at the end of November, I still don't think I know who's going to be the two teams in the game. I think San Francisco and Philly this weekend could be a Super Bowl preview, but will never happen because of the conferences. But I don't know what else will happen.
Yeah, San Francisco, Philadelphia, and Dallas feel like in the NFC, it's going to be one of those teams. In the AFC, a lot more parity of who could be the team that contends and has that spot in the Super Bowl. So maybe, Michael, let's start this hour with your top 5 teams in the NFL. Usually around this time, we're doing Lombardi's list anyway, so let's just dive right into it. Who is your top, based on your top 5 rankings, who is your top NFC and top AFC team where things sit currently?
Well, Baltimore's my top AFC. They rank 4th overall in my rankings, and along with Kansas City, who ranks 5th. San Francisco and Dallas are the two teams that separate themselves. Then it's Philadelphia, and Philly's closer to Baltimore and Kansas City than they are to San Francisco. In my rankings and what I do strictly on those 18 numbers that I believe indicate going towards winning, what determines the outcome of most games. You know, when I broke down this game, I mean, I did have San Francisco as the favorite. They're the favorite, even though they're playing in Philadelphia. So, I had it as a 1.5 point game. Now it's up to 3. At some point, you got to buy back on Philly. The problem when you buy back on Philly at 3 is you're hoping they have enough gas in the fourth quarter, right? You're hoping that the 92 plays they played defensively on Sunday isn't going to wear them down, and it's hard to play doubleheaders in football. I think it's one of the reasons why the Bengals aren't as good. The Bengals have gone 2 years in a row of reaching the conference championship. And for most teams, they kind of know how to handle that. Kansas City does. But there's a wear and tear on some of those teams that don't. And I think that does affect it. You made a point in the last block about T.J. Watt's sack total going up in December. I think a lot of what's going to happen between now and we get to the playoffs is the teams that understand how to practice and how to stay physical and how to keep their pad level down in December and January can continue to rise. Whereas some of these teams that just do walkthroughs, it becomes harder and harder to play physical football. And I think that's where T.J. Watt takes advantage of a lot of teams, especially in December, because they're not used to the physicality that comes with the games this late in the season because their bodies are beat up.
Right. And to your point about Philly, especially at this point in the season, I feel like it's a rough week for them to have to play San Francisco. Yes, because of the 91 plays last week, but it's back-to-back weeks that they've had these emotional, kind of down-to-the-wire, hard, bang them out, drag them out type of fight games. And now you have to go on and face a team that is hungry as hell to beat you because of the way that things transpired in last year's NFC Championship game and are kind of peaking at the right time right now in the season. So that's going to be a great game this weekend, game of the week, no doubt. A little bit bummed that it's in the afternoon slate and not one of those primetime stand alone so that we can really enjoy it. But then you round out your top 5, Michael, with the Kansas City Chiefs, who I wonder this past week with the way that they performed coming back from down 14-0 and actually scoring points in the second half, which is a revelation based on what we had seen the 3 weeks prior. They actually, Michael, are 31 of 32 teams in second half points, which is kind of crazy to think about given how historically we know that this team has performed on offense. But are they a team that is starting to figure it out? We talked about Rashee Rice earlier this week and how we finally have a pass catcher not named Travis Kelce doing something. If he wakes up and can lead that group, is the sky the limit maybe for this Kansas City team? Because we know they have a great defense already.
No, I don't think so. I think, the more when they play bad teams, they're going to look good. When they play bad teams, when they play the Raiders again in week 16, they'll score 30. When they play Cincinnati in week 17, they'll score 30. When they play the Chargers, if Staley's even the coach by then, they'll score 30. When they play these other teams, it's going to be a little bit more of a challenge. It's going to be more methodical. It's going to have to rely on stringing good plays together. Now, they did it against the Raiders, but we know the Raiders, Max Crosby, God bless him, he tried to go. It wasn't the same. They really couldn't get the pressure on Mahomes. I don't think they've solved it yet, Stormy. The 31, that was, they spotted them 14. They came back. They got back the back self in the game, but it wasn't a typical, oh, my God, look how beautiful they're operating. I think there's a lot left here, and I think they're vulnerable. Look, I think Kansas City can get there, but I think they're beatable. I think Baltimore can get there. I think they're beatable. Miami, I think they could get there with a little less apprehension than the other two, but they're beatable. And especially with weather. I mean, this is a big game for Miami going to Washington, especially if it rains and it's in the 40 degrees. How are they going to handle that? How's Tua going to throw the ball? Last time he played outdoors in a December game against Tennessee, it wasn't pretty.
9.5-point favorite in that game in Washington. And to your point about weather, Kansas City is going to face some weather this week as well out there at Lambeau Field against a Packers team that's kind of streaking a little bit themselves here. Won and covered in 3 of their last 4 games. And Jordan Love's probably coming off the best game of his young career. So we go from the best to let's go to the worst. Your bottom 5 teams in the NFL right now, Michael. Who's on the list?
Well, there's so many bad teams. It's really, it's hard.
It's hard to narrow it down to the worst 5 because there's so many.
The Giants, Carolina, Arizona, New England, Chicago, they're in the bottom. And the Jets and Tennessee, Washington are close to them, and so are the Raiders. Yeah, you can go. There is really 9 bad teams. They really are. And Cincinnati would make it 10 because Cincy is really bad defensively. Their numbers are bad defensively. Now, once again, remember, I'm not judging this. This isn't the eye test. This isn't, I want to put Kansas City ahead of Baltimore because, no. It has nothing to do with what happened last week. My ratings are all predicated on the 18 categories that goes towards winning, which then sets up a power ranking that I have. Based on that, it gives me a number, and then I take that number and I value that number against the number of the team they're playing, and it gives me an idea of the point spread. So it's how each team handles those 18 categories especially. Now, like for example, Stormy, this week, when you're looking at some of these games, you've got to factor in the injury part, right? If New Orleans doesn't have all their players and they're missing all these starters, right now I have this as a 1.24 game favor in Detroit. It's up to 4. So do I take New Orleans? Is that a play do I make? No. I'm not taking Carr there. I'm not taking him without his receivers for sure. So it kind of gives you an idea of a game for me to probe into. Like Cleveland. Cleveland's numbers are better than the Rams. I don't think anybody would argue that over the course of the 11 games, Cleveland has played better than the Rams. And we know the Rams have no home field advantage. There'll be more brown and white at that stadium on Sunday than everywhere, right? So I have the Browns as a slight favorite, but we know the Browns don't have a quarterback. We don't know about Myles Garrett. So you have to be careful just playing the number.
I think that's a great example, though, of why you make these so that it can give you an opportunity of which games you want to look into, which games you absolutely don't. And you have those strictly based on what associates with winning, but then you can throw your eye test into it and make your ultimate decision.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.